In the world of the Mafia, loyalty was everything. Once you swore the oath of omertà, the code of silence, there was no turning back. You lived for the family, and you died for it. But in 1991, the unthinkable happened. A man who had murdered without hesitation, who stood at the very top of the Mafia's bloody empire, did the one thing no one thought possible. He broke the code. His name was Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano, and his betrayal destroyed the Teflon Don himself, John Gotti. This is the story of the rat in the ranks. Salvatore Gravano was born on March 12, 1945, in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, a working-class neighborhood filled with immigrants, many of them Sicilian. Bensonhurst was the kind of place where a boy had to be tough to survive. Sammy wasn't book-smart. Dyslexia crippled him in school, and teachers wrote him off as slow. But on the streets, where fists and fear ruled, he found his place. One story became neighborhood legend. A group of older kids tried to steal his bike. Most boys would have run, but Sammy fought back with such ferocity that onlookers said he charged like a bull. From that day forward, he carried a nickname that would follow him for life: Sammy the Bull. As a teenager, Sammy joined local street gangs. Petty theft, bar fights, stolen cars, these became his education. Unlike others, Sammy never backed down. Violence wasn't just part of his life. It was the language he spoke best. By the late 1960s, the Gambino crime family had noticed him. The Gambinos were the most powerful mafia family in New York, and they needed enforcers. Sammy was perfect, fearless, brutal, and loyal to the chain of command. But in the mafia, loyalty always came at a cost. In the 1970s, Sammy Gravano officially became a made man. He wasn't just an associate anymore, he was part of the Gambino family. To be made meant you were untouchable. It meant you had sworn omertà. It meant blood in, blood out. Sammy quickly became one of the family's most feared soldiers. He killed when ordered. He killed when threatened. And sometimes he killed simply to send a message. But Sammy wasn't just muscle. He was smart about money. While others chased quick cash through gambling or drugs, Sammy saw the future in construction racketeering. He muscled into unions, extorted developers, and skimmed millions from building contracts across New York City. It was the perfect racket: steady money, low risk, and total control. And Sammy ran it with ruthless efficiency. By the early 1980s, Gravano had made millions. But with money came ambition and new alliances. That's when he met another rising Gambino capo, John Gotti. John Gotti was everything Sammy wasn't. Loud, flashy, charismatic. Where Sammy preferred shadows, Gotti craved the spotlight. He wore $1,000 suits, laughed with reporters, and strutted like a movie star. But beneath the charm, Gotti was ruthless, and he had his eyes on the throne. At that time, the Gambino boss was Paul Castellano. Castellano was old school, preferring boardrooms to backrooms, white-collar schemes to street violence. He looked down on men like Gotti and Gravano, dismissing them as thugs. The tension grew, and on December 16, 1985, it exploded outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. That freezing night, Castellano stepped out of his black Lincoln. Before he could even button his coat, four hitmen in trench coats appeared. Gunfire shattered the air. Castellano collapsed in the snow, blood soaking his camel overcoat. His underboss, Thomas Bellotti, died beside him. Within hours, word spread. John Gotti had made his move. Castellano was gone. The Gambinos had a new boss. And Sammy Gravano? He had just bet his future on Gotti. With Castellano dead, John Gotti became the new godfather of the Gambino family. He was hailed as the Dapper Don for his style, and later the Teflon Don for his courtroom victories. Trial after trial ended in acquittal, thanks to bribed jurors and intimidated witnesses. Gotti seemed untouchable. Sammy Gravano, now a capo under Gotti, flourished. He ran multimillion-dollar rackets, controlled construction unions, and made sure enemies disappeared. Where Gotti was the face, Sammy was the muscle, the enforcer in the shadows. For years, it worked. The Gambinos became America's most powerful mafia family. pulling in hundreds of millions annually. Gotti basked in fame, walking past cameras like a king. But with power came arrogance. And with arrogance came danger. Unlike past bosses who hid in quiet mansions, Gotti embraced celebrity. He wanted to be seen. He wanted headlines. But every headline caught the FBI's attention. The Bureau planted wiretaps inside Gotti's headquarters, the Rave Night social club in Little Italy. Hours of recordings captured the Don's voice, plotting hits, discussing money, and worse, blaming Sammy Gravano for everything. On tape, Gotti painted Sammy as reckless, greedy, dangerous. To law enforcement, it sounded like evidence. To Sammy, it sounded like betrayal. Then came the indictments. In December 1990, Gotti, Sammy, and consigliere Frank Lacasio were arrested on charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and murder. Inside his cell, Sammy listened to the tapes. For the first time, he realized John Gotti wasn't protecting him. He was sacrificing him. Faced with life behind bars, Gravano made a decision that would stun the mafia. He flipped. The FBI could hardly believe it. An underboss, the second most powerful man in the Gambino family, was ready to testify against his own boss. In court, Sammy became the government's star witness. Calmly, coldly, he recounted decades of crimes. He described Gotti ordering murders, including the hit on Castellano. He exposed the inner workings of the Gambinos in detail law enforcement had never heard. For John Gotti, it was devastating. The Teflon Don was finished. In 1992, he was convicted on all counts. Life in prison, no parole. The courtroom gasped. The public headlines screamed. The most powerful mob boss in America had been betrayed by his own underboss. Sammy Gravano walked out of court a free man. For admitting to 19 murders, he served just 5 years. The government called it a victory. The mafia called it treason. Placed in witness protection, Sammy was supposed to vanish. But he couldn't stay quiet. He gave interviews, appeared in documentaries, even published books. He lived openly in Arizona, flaunting the protection most informants clung to. But old habits die hard. In 2000, Gravano was arrested for running a massive ecstasy ring. In 2002, he was sentenced to 20 years. Even after betraying the mafia and escaping death, Sammy had gone back to crime. Sammy the Bull Gravano remains one of the most controversial figures in mafia history. To some, he's the man who destroyed John Gotti and helped the government cripple La Cosa Nostra. To others, he's the ultimate traitor, the rat who broke the sacred code of silence. But one truth cannot be denied. When the underboss flipped, the mafia's world was never the same again. The code was broken. Trust was shattered. And in the shadows of America's underworld, the question still lingers. If Sammy the Bull could betray his boss, how many others might be waiting to betray theirs?